unfortunately, schools are a target. Schools have got no money, unfortunately, but they are still a target because of the rich data they hold. They've got information on pupils, they've got information on the staff, they've got information on the families, and that sort of information is really valuable to a cyber criminal. Unfortunately, the schools can't pay the ransom, and the UK government are actually looking at preventing public organizations like schools from paying ransoms, but it doesn't stop schools getting hit, unfortunately. So we have to do the best we can to protect them from all of these threats.
You are listening to the MSP Security Playbook, the show where modern MSPs come to sharpen their strategy, streamline operations, and secure their growth. I'm your host, Jacob Hazelbaker, BDR at Heimdal Security, where we help MSPs win with unified, AI-powered cybersecurity solutions. Today's guest is Kevin Walker, owner of Black Swan Cyber, an MSP that has carved out a clear niche protecting schools and educational institutions. With nearly 20 years of experience in IT for education, Kevin has seen firsthand how underfunded and underprotected schools are when it comes to cyber threats, and he's on a mission to change that. In this conversation, Kevin shares why specializing in education has not only given his business a sharper focus, but also uncovered critical lessons about aligning purposes with profit. We break down the UK Department of Education's new cybersecurity standards, what they mean in practice for schools, and the essential control MSPs need to implement to help their clients stay compliant. Kevin also explains how multi-academy trusts are changing the landscape for MSPs, why he prioritizes protection over chasing MRR, and how Cyber Essentials is opening new doors in industries like construction and trades when compliance is rapidly becoming mandatory. It's a conversation full of practical guidance, fresh perspective, and real-world lessons for MSPs who want to grow with purpose while keeping their clients secure. But before that, here is Adam Pilton, Heimdal Security's advisor, with this week's threat brief.
Thanks, Jacob. Imagine this. Your team are using Google's Gemini to boost productivity, and they believe it's safe. However, researchers have uncovered 3 separate vulnerabilities in Cloud Assist, the search personalization model, and the browsing tool. Each of these flaws stands on its own. They don't need to be chained together. On their own, they can be used to infiltrate systems or to quietly leak sensitive data. Here's what happens at a high level. With Cloud Assist, attackers can slip crafted instructions into the data Gemini is asked to summarize. When someone later uses Cloud Assist to explain those logs or entries, the assistant can return deceptive results, steering engineers towards unsafe actions or leaking hidden details. With search personalization, attackers can tamper with the signals Gemini uses to tailor results. That means the assistant's answers can be manipulated, surfacing attacker-driven content or exposing personal information tied to a user's search history. And with the browsing tool, attackers can get Gemini to fetch malicious websites. In doing so, the assistant can unknowingly send pieces of private data out to attacker-controlled servers. Each vulnerability is powerful on its own because the features involved, summarization, personalization, and browsing, are widely used, and the abuse looks like normal assistant behavior. So here's what you need to do. First, inventory where Gemini is being used and restrict risky features. Summarization, personalization, browsing should all be treated as high risk until proven safe. Second, sanitize what goes in and enforce least privilege. Don't let raw and trusted text flow straight into the system, and don't give it unnecessary access to sensitive systems or data. And third, detect and coordinate. Watch for unusual assistant activity, odd summaries, unexplained browsing requests, or suspicious data flows, and feed these signals into your security playbooks while keeping up with vendor advisories. The lesson here is simple. AI features are useful, but they're also new attack surfaces. Each vulnerability matters on its own. Treat Gemini like a high-risk integration until you're certain it's secure. Stay sharp. Catch you in the next threat brief. Back to you, Jacob.
Mr. Kevin Walker, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Jacob. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. I'm really pleased to be doing the podcast with you today.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. I love your background too. You have an interesting background, particularly in a niche I'm real excited to chat with you about. So, for our listeners who may not yet know, could you share a little bit about your background and what led you to start Black Swan Cyber?
Yeah, of course, Jacob, no problem. So I've actually been working in IT now for virtually 30 years, I believe. I think next year will be my third decade in IT. So I actually started in the corporate world at Royal Mail. I was a systems manager there, looking after two of their large database systems, and that's really where I cut my teeth. I was kind of like an interface between the customers and the techies, and I was translating technical speak into customer language and the customer requirements into technical speak for the technical teams. And that's really helped me in my own business. I think the problem with a lot of MSPs is they can't speak plain English. You've got to be able to describe things to people. And that lesson was fantastic. But unfortunately, things came to an end. I was working in a team of four, which went down to a team of two. And then they wanted one person to manage everything. And myself and my colleague decided it wasn't for us. So we both took voluntary redundancy. And that's where my business started. I set up a little business called Bits and PCs Limited. And I was doing work for the general public initially, but I was working really long hours for very little pay. And I think it was my wife's auntie, she suggested I contact schools and see if I could get into the education market. So I contacted the schools in my village. One of them set me on, and 20 years later, here I am. I'm still doing IT in schools. But again, there's been a bit of a shift in IT. The multi academy trusts have kind of taken over a lot of the schools and they're centralizing the IT support within the trusts. So independent contractors like myself, unfortunately, get pushed out. And rather than seeing that as a threat, I saw it as an opportunity. And that's kind of where Black Swan was born. I was listening to Chris Voss's audiobook, Never Split the Difference, and it was all about his Black Swan group. And I thought, Black Swan, that's a brilliant name for a business, particularly in cyber, because Black Swan events are things that you can't predict. It's something that exceeds people's expectations. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to exceed their expectations and deliver a service that's really good for them.
That's an interesting world to me. And also, something you mentioned when we last spoke was the Department of Education's new cybersecurity standards. Uh, can you walk us through what some of those standards mean in practice for schools and MSPs like yours serving them?
Yeah, of course. I found the standards to be really good. They're a great way of focusing minds in schools. And I actually consulted with the DFE on these cybersecurity standards when they first came out and when they actually revised them. There's a number of key requirements, really. MFA everywhere you can, possibly. You've got to have an EDR rather than a bog standard antivirus, something that's centrally managed. You've got to have secure, immutable backups and staff training. Staff training is a biggie, really. There's a lot of stress in schools, and teachers, unfortunately, they click and they open these attachments. So it's trying to get the message across to pause before clicking, think before clicking, and just take that break, really, and just think about what might happen if you click on a phishing email. But the standards have been good. I think they're a great resource. And it certainly made my life easy as an MSP serving schools. It gives you a set of standards that you've got to work towards.
That's actually something I've never heard before, and I like that. So, having these new standards, these new compliance frameworks in place, made your life as an MSP easier.
Exactly, because it's not just me telling the teachers and the head teachers and the school business managers that they've got to be doing this. It's actually coming from a government department saying they need to do it. Unfortunately, schools are a target. Schools have got no money, unfortunately, but they are still a target because of the rich data they hold. They've got information on pupils, they've got information on the staff, they've got information on the families, and that sort of information is really valuable to a cyber criminal. Unfortunately, the schools can't pay the ransom, and the UK government are actually looking at preventing public organizations like schools from paying ransoms, but it doesn't stop schools getting hit, unfortunately. So we have to do the best we can to protect them from all of these threats.
I imagine so. Yeah, the ransomware attacks, unfortunately, are still as prevalent as ever. And uh, I wish it wasn't, but that's just how it goes. So, with all of these different compliance frameworks and things that you're working with, I'm super curious, and you have a lot of experience in MSP space, especially with schools. So, if an MSP is thinking about serving schools specifically, what are some of the must-have security controls or processes they would need to implement in order to meet any kind of basic compliance?
I think the first thing really is to get your own house in order. So something like Cyber Essentials in the UK is a must-have because it means you've met the 5 controls that you need to pass the certification. So you need the firewalls, you need the antivirus, you need secure configuration, and you need a reasonable, decent antivirus, anti-malware system on there. And we believe in eating our own dog food. It's a horrible expression, but I wouldn't actually sell anything to a school that I wouldn't be prepared to use myself. So we use the Heimdal's full stack in house, and because I do that, I'm happy to now recommend it to schools. So I say that's your first stage. The next things you've got to look at really is having a plan for if something does go wrong. And unfortunately, things do go wrong. So you've got to have an incident response plan. But when you're talking to schools, it's about talking in plain English, really. Head teachers and school business managers don't understand the acronyms we use in cyber. So there's no point talking about EDR, MDR, and XDR. All they want to know is they're protected and they're going to be able to sleep at night, knowing the cyber criminals are not going to break in over the weekends or in the school holidays. But another thing I've been looking at really is the cultural side of cyber. It's an area I'm fascinated by. So, looking at the psychology and the culture, the reasons why people click on links, the reasons why they open attachments, and trying to look at ways you can actually prevent that happening, looking at the stress they might be under, looking at the pressures they're facing, and just trying to help with a bit of training just to try and prevent these incidents from happening.
The psychology of why people click on things. Could you tell us more about that? I'm really curious. I haven't dove into that myself.
Yeah, it's interesting, really. I mean, a lot of it is down to stress because we're humans. Our very nature is to be helpful. We want to help people. So you see an email with an attachment saying, "Oh, you need to pay this invoice," and you think, "Well, I better pay that invoice." But it's using other methods, really. It's looking at the stress they might be under and just basically advising them to pause and think and just check some of the red flags in that email first before clicking. And when in doubt, ask a colleague, or when in doubt, ask your IT support. I'm always available and willing to help schools just to prevent these incidents from happening.
That's wonderful. And yeah, unfortunately, those phishing emails are still one of the most prevalent ways that people get compromised today. It's hard to believe, really, looking back, but
Yeah, I think it's still the most common way of them getting in, unfortunately. And
yeah.
it's cheap for the cyber criminals. They can send thousands and thousands of these emails, and it only takes 1% of people to click, and they've made the money, haven't they, really?
Yeah, unfortunately. So, some of the things you've said have really caught my attention, and this next question I thought of for you is kind of related to some of it, perhaps. So, I'm super curious. What's your approach to convincing skeptical decision makers in schools that cybersecurity investment is non-negotiable?
Well, first, as I mentioned earlier, I don't like selling with fear. I don't like the FUD. There's too much FUD in this industry, to be honest. So it's framing it in a way that they're going to be protected from crime, but not saying that it's. We talk about it a lot. It's not if, it's when. But they don't need to know that. So I try and frame it as a safeguarding duty. So it's a way of protecting the kids. In the UK, we have something called Keeping Children Safe in Education, and that's really the educational Bible for safeguarding. And that now, thanks to the DFE cybersecurity standards, does actually mention cybersecurity in there. So it's another way that schools are being told that they need to be doing this sort of things. So cybersecurity, I frame it as protecting the pupils, protecting the staff, protecting the school community, and that resonates far more than using technical jargon. And as I say, the DFE standards have really helped back me up with what I've been telling schools for the last 20 years, really.
Yeah, that's great. And that touches back to what you said earlier about compliance. frameworks making your life easier because then they know they actually need it. They have to have it. And I love that you focus on what it is that schools, your target audience, cares about the most, which is protecting the kids, protecting the students there. So that's smart. Focusing on what they care about, your clients, instead of the technical jargon or the solution itself. I think that's a really good approach.
Thank you. Yeah, it works. It's probably not the best way of doing things, but I've found it works in schools, and it works for me, and my schools always seem happy with that. There's no point bombarding people with technical jargon that they don't understand. You frame it in a way they do understand, and they're more likely to take it on board.
I fully agree. And you've said in the past that you're not chasing MRR at all costs, but instead focusing on protection. How does that shape the way you grow your business compared to a typical MSP?
Well, I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, and he talks about people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I find MRR a vanity metric, to be honest. I find better rewards in actually supporting the schools and knowing I've protected thousands of people from cyber attack. I find that more of a reward, to be honest. I'm more about building up long-term partnerships rather than just transactional contracts. We were talking about books earlier, and another one I've been reading recently is Arnold Schwarzenegger's "Be Useful," and he talks about something called breaking the glass. And it's about stopping, looking in the mirror, stop being so vain, and actually break the glass and look at the people behind it. And that's something that's really important to me. I would say the importance of protecting the vulnerable is far more than having a vanity metric like MRR, and that's my reward. I'm not in business to make headlines. My ethos is to stop the schools becoming the headlines.
I love that, and I've heard a lot of other MSPs tell me the same thing. They're there to help people, there to protect people from getting hacked or having a really horrible workday because of their computers being down, and I really respect that. I think that'll get you farther in life, focusing on the why, kind of like Simon Sinek referred to, as you mentioned, instead of just focusing on the dollars, the pounds, the euros, the money. Like there's more to it than just a paycheck. Something we were talking about earlier was the academies, Academy Trust, multiple Academy Trusts. So this kind of relates a little bit, like you said, to the US side as well for MSPs who work with schools. So I'm super curious with multiple Academy Trusts acting almost like businesses, how does that change the way MSPs should engage with them versus individual schools?
I think it depends who you're talking to be honest, Jacob. When you're talking to the teachers in the classrooms, they're exactly the same as a normal school. But if you're talking to the C-suite, it's about framing things in a different way. The COOs and the CEOs are looking for a strategic partner. They're managing multiple sites, they're managing vast budgets, and they're looking at compliance. And they want a strategic partner to work with who can manage all of that for them. So I tend to talk in terms of risk management, consistency, long-term planning, things like that. It becomes less about fixing Mrs. Smith's printer and more about supporting them and more about becoming a strategic partner and helping them do the things that they can't do themselves in-house. I'll tell you a funny story, actually. I was working with a trust once, and we were looking at multifunction printing devices. And I was working with the finance director on this at the time. And he was looking at CSR policies, he was looking at costs, he was looking at budgets. And I relayed this back to the head teacher at the time. And she said to me, I'm not really bothered about that, to be honest. I just want something that's cheap to run, prints pretty pictures, and if it breaks, they come and fix it. So it depends who you're talking to. You've got to wear multiple hats as an MSP, and you've got to speak the language of the people you're talking to. And whether that works the same whether you're working in education, working in care, working with industry, or working in the corporate world. You've got to frame your language around the people you're talking to, and just change what you say to them. I mentioned culture and psychology earlier. Somebody I really follow on LinkedIn is Dr. Jessica Barker, and she's been talking a lot about reframing how we refer to staff. A lot of things in the cyber world, we talk about the weakest link or human risk. And it's about blaming people. And I don't like blaming people. People make mistakes. They can't help doing this stuff. And I'm all about reframing it as the staff being your strongest line of defense. And it's how you talk to people. I think it's important. You've got to look at the root cause of what's happening, and you've got to build lasting resilience in schools.
That's a good point. You got to build lasting resilience in schools. How, how have you found, like, when you're working with schools, once they pick a solution, once they pick a system, a hardware, computer, is that often in place for a long time as well, or only a short time?
Unfortunately, so yes. I mean, back in the days when I've been doing this such a long time now, I remember XP being replaced. We still had schools on XP way beyond its end of life. Luckily, Microsoft extended it for a little while for us, which bought us about a year. Had the same issue with Windows 7. Windows 10 goes end of life very soon. And there's still a lot of legacy devices out there, unfortunately. And it's about getting the most bang for your buck. It's an American term, but I'm going to use it. For schools, you've got to get the most out of your budgets. And a lot of times, the laptops are running way beyond their lifespan, 6, 7, 8 year olds, some cases. And very often I find a teaching assistant finds a dusty old laptop in a cupboard and decides to plug it in and hope it works. From a cyber perspective, that's a nightmare for me. And we have to get rid of them as soon as possible. But budgets are tight, unfortunately. And I do as much as I can to get as much quality equipment and quality software like the cyber side as much as I can for the schools.
It's fascinating to me, just all around the world, how similar some of these specific industries really are. Working with them, it's it's very similar here on the U.S. side. We found too, so that's kind of wonderful. I like that. For the UK side, you have the cyber essentials, and it looks like it's becoming increasingly important, even beyond education. So, do MSPs need to know about serving SMEs or trades where compliance is now being mandatory?
Yeah, Cyber Essentials is really a gatekeeper now for government contracts and a lot of supply chain work. The top four CISOs from the top four construction companies in the UK are now mandating it for all of their supply chain before anybody's even allowed on site. The
Wow.
Federation of Master Builders are now recommending it to their members. And I was reading something the other day. The hair and beauty product manufacturer L'Oreal, they're even recommending it to their hair and beauty salons as an essential thing to have. Uh, Another funny story, you wouldn't have thought so, but strawberries are apparently part of the national infrastructure in the UK. And a strawberry grower has been told that they need to get cyber essentials. Can you guess why, Jacob?
I have no idea why.
It's all down to Wimbledon and the tennis. Because if the people watching the tennis don't have the strawberries, they get very upset and grumpy. So the strawberry grower now has to have cyber essentials. But I've heard of taxi drivers taking builders and construction workers to site. They've been told by the construction owners that they need cyber essentials. And it's a good way of getting into cybersecurity. I alluded earlier to the 5 controls. It's not completely perfect, but it's a baseline, it's a starting point. Unfortunately, a lot of people see it as a point in time exercise, a bit like your car MOT. You take it in, it gets checked over, and it passes, and that's you safe for another year. But at Black Swan, we don't view it like that. We don't view it as a point in time exercise. We view it as an ongoing commitment, really. Cybersecurity doesn't stop once you've got that certificate. You've got to keep improving. You've got to keep watching what's happening out there. Uh, and if you don't, you're going to lose contracts. You're going to get fined. It's a low cost investment, but high rewards if you can get all these government contracts.
Yeah, I imagine so. I love your wealth of experience, especially in the MSP space on the UK side and in education. So, looking ahead, where do you see some of the biggest opportunities for MSPs to essentially future proof their business in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think most people would probably say AI, but I'm not going to say AI. I use AI myself. I love AI. I think it's brilliant, but I still prefer human-led cybersecurity, but with a bit of AI enhancement. So I'm not going to say AI. My big thing at the minute is compliance-driven cybersecurity. The regulations are tightening up in the UK. We talked about cyber essentials a minute ago, but there are other things coming in like NIS2. There's DORA in the EU, and in the other market, I look after care homes and care providers. There's the Data Security and Protection Toolkit. So there's a lot of regulation, really. So you need to be an expert in lots of different things working in cybersecurity, but it takes you from being an IT provider to a compliance partner, and I think that is really important.
Interesting. From an IT provider to a compliance partner. I like that a lot because I feel like the IT technical side for a lot of us is way more interesting than the compliance side. So often we focus on the solution and not so much on the business side, the compliance that our clients are really, really stressed about often. So that's a great approach.
It's really important. A lot of technical people are brilliant at the technical side of stuff, but you've got to look at the other side of things now. Cyber is very compliance driven. It's not just about ticking boxes. It is really making sure people are secure, and they're able to open up tomorrow.
That's true. Got to keep your clients in business after all.
Exactly. Yes.
So, Kevin, now we're on to my favorite part of this podcast. We call it the MSP Hot Seat. It's where one of our viewers gets to ask an MSP like you a question. And so, our question for you today says, if you could only recommend one cybersecurity control or best practice for every school in the UK to adopt tomorrow, what would it be and why?
Be definitely multi-factor authentication. Passwords are stolen and phished all of the time, and MFA blocks the majority of these attacks. You might get a bit of pushback. I certainly did in schools. Staff don't like it at all. But once you explain the reasons why you've implemented it, you're protecting the kids, you're protecting the data, you're protecting the staff. They appreciate the reasons why you're doing it. But on top of that, I'd also recommend strong, robust passwords, unique ones for every website and service you use. It's a low risk, it's a low cost, and it does actually prevent a lot of cyber attacks. So MFA and robust passwords would be my top tip.
Great. Well, thank you. And finally, if our listeners want to learn more about your work or get in touch with you, where's the best place to find you?
I'm always active on LinkedIn, so you can find me on there, Kevin Walker or Black Swan Cybersecurity Solutions, or you can visit my website at blackswancyber.co.uk. I must add the .co.uk because there's a .com as well. Dr. Mike Saylor in the United States. I think we get a bit of each other's traffic, so remember to put in the .co.uk at the end, not .com.
Very nice. Well, Mr. Kevin Walker, I really appreciate today's conversation. I feel like I learned some things, especially about MSPs on the UK side of the world. I've been so curious what that's like, and I really appreciate your time today, sir.
No, thank you very much, Jacob. It's been really good to talk to you. Thank you.
I really enjoyed today's conversation with Kevin Walker. It's a conversation I've been hoping to have with the MSP for a while. I was really curious what the business for MSPs are like on the other side of the globe, and specifically in the education niche. So today was really insightful. One thing he said that really stuck in my head was about speaking the language of your clients. But I remembered that Kevin has this particular niche market of the education sector. So it occurred to me that if you speak the language of your clients and you have a niche, then you're much more able to speak to what it is your particular niche market, your particular sector of clients that you're helping really cares about. What are they concerned about in education specifically? What are they looking to do maybe this year or next and to maintain compliance in the education section, for example? So I think that really speaks truth to a lot of MSPs. I've seen a lot of MSPs going into niche markets to really honing in on a target audience, because that would in great part allow you to speak their language specifically, hone in on what it is they care about. Another thing that I found with Kevin is that, like a lot of MSPs, are very interested in protecting people. They are driven by the why, by wanting to help students in Kevin's case. The money is a nice secondary, really good, important goal, but the primary motivator isn't the amount of money in the bank. It's about helping people, it's about protecting people. And I found a lot of MSPs, probably many of you listening to this podcast today, are also primarily motivated about helping people. So I think that's super great. It's really good, motivating in life to have that as your driver instead of just money in the bank. And the other thing I thought was super interesting, and the main reason I was really excited to chat with Kevin was Kevin's based in the UK, I'm based in the US, and I've seen throughout our conversation today a lot of similarities between MSPs all across the globe. It seems a lot of the things that schools in, for example, England are concerned about are things that I've heard schools in the US tell me that they are concerned about. Budgets are tight, they want to meet compliance, and they don't necessarily understand cyber, but they really want to keep their students safe. So I think that's really fascinating and kind of eye-opening, especially as our world becomes more interconnected, more global, that a lot of what MSPs are facing in one part of the world might be what MSPs are facing in the other part of the world as well. So I really enjoyed today's podcast, and I hope you did as well. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a really great day. That's a wrap on this episode of MSP Security Playbook. Thanks for spending part of your day with us. If you found today's insights helpful, be sure to follow the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. It helps other MSPs find the playbook and level up their security game. Got a question you want us to tackle in the MSP Hot Seat? Or a topic you'd like to hear more about? Drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay sharp, stay secure, and keep building the future of your MSP business.